Welcome to the As Yet Unknown podcast. My name's Alex Snyder, your back pocket coach consultant and connection catalyst. Entrepreneurship is a bit like bungee jumping, a big leap into the unknown, and it can be a lonely, bumpy ride. It's also one of the most empowering and liberating things you can do. Each episode is a dose of fresh perspectives designed to leave you feeling connected to innovative ideas and inspired about growing your business your way. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's have an adventure. Kena, thank you so much for being here today. When you and I first connected, we were introduced by a mutual friend and colleague, and we really just clicked right away, which is always such a nice feeling. And as we got to know each other, what often happens, I think, is you start to find the layers of life as you get to know somebody, and you start to kind of understand where you really resonate and why that initial connection kind of sparked so quickly. And I think that for you and me, it was really that we have both overcome the odds multiple times in our lives. And yeah, that is just like something that right now is so powerful. And you have such this incredible personal and professional journey. Your resume includes some really big names like Houseplant and Indigo, and alongside a series of your own creative endeavors and startups. But what really stands out for me from kind of knowing you and knowing your story is that I think the big takeaway for a lot of people is going to be you know how to zig when others zag and really not get caught in the thought patterns of the moment, which is hard, right? Like we're wired for that. So I'm so excited for today's conversation and for people to hear your story and for us to talk about how people can, employ some of the ways that you have approached things and the lessons that frankly both of us have learned through, multiple recessions or downturns or whatever you want to call them. So thank you again for being here. And if you want to add on to that intro, tell people a little bit about yourself, that'd be amazing.
Amazing. Thank you, Alex, for having me. And I totally agree that we did hit it off right away. We went like several layers deep on our first connection, which I love. I'm all about having, real connection with people. So I have had, over 20 years of experience in retail, mostly on the retail side, direct to consumer. And I've also had my own creative businesses, as you mentioned, my current one being my brand, All You Are, which we'll talk about. And alongside my professional experiences, or as I say, the bullet points on my LinkedIn profile, I have had significant personal challenges and a journey that has taught me a lot about myself. So what I've been working on over the last couple of years is, wanting to show up and serve in a way that brings all of that together. My, bullet points on my LinkedIn profile, but then all of this rich learning that I've done just by experiencing life. So I think going through some of those difficult times, the, I guess, most significant one being my husband became very ill when I was 30 years old and was sick for a long time until he passed away at age 38. So in my 30s, when life looked one way to a lot of people, my life felt very different. And so I had to search for answers so that I could not feel like I was just trying to survive during all that time. And I think that's when I really started to go on this journey of how can I see life through a lens that allows me to thrive even when my situation doesn't, support that. And that has, of course, served me in many ways throughout my life since then.
Of course. Wow. Thank you for sharing. I mean, that level of, personal challenge. And I know some of the timing of that did overlap with, more macroeconomic challenges is, something that obviously, none of us wish for, but so many people do go through aversion and there's only so much kind of support you can get from the outside that there is certain things, like you said, that you have to figure out how you are going to address the situation and what works.
Hmm.
So, right now, everywhere you look, it's recession. It's recession, whether you follow, the stock market, or you look at news of the housing market, or you're listening to reports of these wild mass layoffs that are happening. And I can imagine that many of those listening are thinking, like, I just need to batten down the hatches. I just need to hold on to what I have. I just
Hmm.
have to weather this storm in whatever way
Hmm.
possible. And I'm curious, given your experiences, what would you say to those people? Is that not the reality that's staring us in the face?
Right. Yes. I mean, it's such an interesting question. And I'm going to speak from my experience because I think I sort of fell into this learning. So when I was 30, it was 2008 when my husband got sick. So obviously, like the one of the greatest financial crises in the last, I don't know how many years. There is a stat around it. I don't remember what it is, but it was bad. We know it was very bad.
We know.
And I had been off work. He had been off work for 4 months. He was in a hospital in the U.S. We moved back to Canada. We were in crisis mode, right? It was very much like we had a home that we had to leave. Again, the housing crisis was happening as well, so the value of our home dropped to like half of what it was. Um, and I moved back when we moved back to Canada, I was I was in a bubble. So yes, all this chaos was happening in the world outside, but I was sort of in my own bubble and I was just laser focused. I need to like find work, right? And I need to find work that is like going to be somewhat fulfilling and is going to be what we need right now. And so I went to work finding, what I needed. I like again, all the news was saying it was explaining what was happening in terms of the job market, but I wasn't paying attention to any of that. I was just laser focused on mining my network, what's available, where are the opportunities, who can I talk to, and in that bubble, I managed to find multiple opportunities. I interviewed as if I was the only person interviewing for the job because that's how I had sort of approached it, like again, with a bit of like blinders on at the time. But there was something about that experience. And, I did land a great position, like a coveted position. And I think what that experience taught me was how would it have turned out if I had absorbed all of that sort of negative news cycle, if I had absorbed that there's no jobs out there, how would I have shown up differently? Like, would I have sent as many emails? Would I have written the email with as much confidence? Would I have like reached out to companies, or would I have thought, well, they don't have any jobs, they just did a layoff, or they don't, So I think I sort of fell into this lesson of um, of yes, there are these macro trends happening, but we have to be so careful about how we perceive it because how we perceive it is obviously how we're thinking about it. How we're thinking about it affects how we feel, and then we act from that place of feeling, right? So
Yes.
if we can start from this place of, the world is full of opportunities, and I have a lot to offer, and we just laser focus on that, it helps us show up in a way that allows for more to come to us.
Yes.
That's sort of like what I learned from that experience.
Yeah, it's sort of like what are the glasses you want to put on, right? And
Exactly.
maybe it's not rose-colored glasses where like
Yes,
everything is peachy keen,
that's
but
right.
um I think it's always like you get to choose your hard, right? And
Yes.
like what you want to be tackling. And you were already tackling so many challenges that it was like
Yeah.
I don't have time for more of challenges.
Yes.
Like let's just deal with what's in front of us.
Yeah. So I didn't do it intentionally, but what I realized afterwards, after I landed that role, people were like, wow, you got this great role, but this, but this, but this. And I realized that by not paying attention to all of that, I was able to really focus in on, what I wanted, right? And I went after it as if it was available to me. And I
Yeah.
think that's the part where we can hold back, because if we think it's not available, we'll kind of like, very hesitantly move towards it, versus when we feel like it is available, we'll like go and try to grab it.
Yeah. It's funny when you told this story, it really brought up for me that I actually went through a really similar thing. And I think I was also in kind of this bubble because
Hmm.
I went through the job search during the housing crisis fallout.
Hmm.
And I was not only looking for a job, I was coming out of an MBA. So I was looking for a job at an entirely different level than anything I had
Hmm.
worked at.
Hmm.
Um, and what I was trying to go into was in a notoriously competitive strategy consulting space. And normally they recruit pretty heavily on campus and business schools. And frankly, they just weren't. There were less opportunities. Some firms weren't hiring at all. Others were only posting maybe undergraduate jobs, but not graduate program level.
Hmm.
It was, I really have this one moment that I really remember. And I went to career services. They have a meeting with every student. You tell them like what you want to do, and they're supposed to help you kind of figure out your plan and what you need to do. And I was
Yeah.
frankly I was the youngest person in my program. I was least experienced. I was just overcome with imposter syndrome. My
Hmm.
classmates were these incredibly impressive people with some were a decade older than me.
Hmm.
You know, just had their experience, people worked at the World Bank and just amazing stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm so there's little me like going to career services. And I said, yeah, I want to go into strategy consulting. And I was like, obviously super jazzed, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
taking this huge leap and investing in myself. And you know what they said to me? They said, well, strategy consulting and iBanking are the two most competitive industries. You should probably put more energy into your plan B.
Ooh.
And I just remember being so shocked. Like it was like the
Yeah.
last thing I
Yeah.
expected to hear. Uh,
Yes.
my heart sank. But I'm thankful in some ways because I actually think this was my distraction from like the macro. I think I was so stubborn.
Right. Right.
I
Yes.
had
Makes sense.
sacrificed so much to invest in myself and be here. I mean, it's the first time since I was like 12, I hadn't had a job. I
Yeah.
just was like not going to let others' defeatist attitude stop me.
Yes. You
I think,
can't tell me that I need a plan B. That's basically
yeah,
how you,
I was
yeah.
like, how dare you? How dare you
Yeah.
tell me to put more energy into plan B than what I
That's
have
right.
come into this program to do?
Yeah.
I think it galvanized me to do even better. And,
That's
I went through it and, it wasn't some like straight line. Like it wasn't a movie where I was like, whew, I'll show you. And then just like cue the music, right? Like that it wasn't, I went through the internship season and there was almost nothing, and I went through it to get to know as many companies as I could and, learned how to do case studies and did all the practice. And, I think made all the connections that I could. And there ended up being like one firm with like two roles for like the entire province
Mhm.
or like actually kind of like pretty much the entire country. And,
You
I
got
actually
one of
got
them.
through there and I went through the whole
Amazing.
process, which was really great. And I made connections. I didn't get an offer. I ended up taking an internship with a medical device manufacturing company. I needed the
Hmm.
experience and the money. And it was funny because the CEO tried to convince me against consulting. He was like, come back here, consulting is terrible. Like you just
Yeah.
do reports and it goes in a drawer. And I was like, I know. But I was really determined. And so when the full-time recruitment came around the next fall, it was a wild and kind of messy because firms were not on schedule and they still weren't sure if they were really hiring. But I actually came out with multiple offers and I got to choose my preferred company and negotiate
Amazing.
my compensation joining package.
Oh
And
my
I think,
gosh, Alex. That's
you know,
amazing.
thank you.
Yeah, but you know what that also yeah, you know what that makes me like, as I'm listening to your story, I think that there's something that happened and everything followed from there. And it's that you decided. You were like,
Yes.
I'm doing this. I'm getting this role because this is what I want. And you
Yeah.
decided, and from there the commitment follows, right? Like once you decide that this is what I'm going to go after for myself, then you will be committed. And it's like you said, it wasn't like a straight path. It's not like you like went straight to the next set of interviews and the role was waiting for you, but your commitment to it was there. And so, it may have taken a little bit of time, but it was happening because you had just made that decision and your commitment to see it through was there. Like that's so powerful. Just even deciding that you're not going to accept, you know, less
That
than what it is that you want.
it was just like, to me, there was just not another option. And
Hmm.
that just stayed my course. And you're right. Like, I mean, I'm talking about like 18 months, right? Like it's a 2-year program, but the recruitment happens in the fall. So like
Yeah.
I'm talking 18 months of just stubborn, diligent, like do the thing, even
Yep.
though you don't know that what you want is out there, right? And,
Yeah.
we say it's like you got to do like 50 to 100 case studies to learn how to do it before you go to an interview. So, like, we're talking get your reps in,
Yeah.
we're talking, face
That's
your
right.
insecurities. We're
That's
talking
right.
like go ask for help, go,
Yep.
figure it out. So I think,
Hmm.
yeah, I think what you're saying, is a really good kind of next question that I have, which is like,
Hmm.
okay, so you make the decision, or you kind of control a little bit the perspective of like what you're
Hmm.
actually up against. But how do you get in the right headspace? Like, how do you shift your perspective?
Yeah. I mean, I think so much of it does rest in your mindset, right? So Carol Dweck wrote a whole book about having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And I think that whenever we come across any challenge like this, it's looking at it as an opportunity to grow, right? Like how can I grow through this?
Mm,
And how can I, like, who can I become through this, right? Like, who can I become through this experience?
yeah.
And you know what I have learned is that we can experience something that is happening in our lives very differently depending on how we assign meaning to it, right? So it could be that this two people could be going through the exact same thing and experience it very differently because of how they assign meaning to what they're going through. So I think this is where we have to block out some of that outside noise that may be telling us this is how you should experience it. Like you should be afraid. You should be, um, you know, like, sending a million emails. You should be worried about your job if you haven't already lost it. Like, instead of that, it's like, how can I expand? How can I expand through this challenge? How can I like grow and evolve as a person and
Mm,
become more powerful, you know? Um, I think for me, even asking the question, um, like, how is this happening for me? How is this happening for me? Right?
mhm.
So, like, what is there in this experience for me that is actually happening for my growth? You know?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think that's like,
The opportunity here. And yeah, I like that. I think also, like, again, and we're talking about this probably from just different angles, but hopefully it's going to
mhm,
resonate for people. It's like,
mhm.
what's the opportunity? How do I see this? Like the example I was just giving, it was about like going all in, right? Like,
Yes.
I
Yes.
went into my MBA and I did not have a job for the
Mhm,
first time since I was 12. And
mhm,
I took on debt for the first time in my life,
mhm.
right? I did not work through my master's degree. And for me, that was like huge. And
Yep.
so what I did was I went all in. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I
Yep.
just need to be at every event. I need to lead every group, club, organization, take on any role I can.
Yes. Yes. I'm gonna embrace it.
Yeah. And honestly, it landed me connections and opportunities. It landed me things that were not published or
Yep.
posted. And I just lived and breathed why I was there, and I let my passion consume me. And to this
Yes.
day, I still
Yes.
come back to that. It's how I
Mhm,
landed in what I'm doing. I'm like, what am I passionate about? What would I talk about day in and day
mhm.
out? Like, just because.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No, it's so true.
yeah, like that opportunity, for me was like a whole growth. There was a huge identity shift that came through that time for me as well.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so funny too because I think like, you know, I think what you're describing is sort of you leaned into the possibility, right? Because like what I think we tend to do is our brains can very easily see what we might be losing, right? Like we know what we have and our brain is like scanning and being like, okay, if like, in this new world that you're walking into, these are all the things that you're losing. It can very clearly see that, but it can't see all the possibilities that lie in that new future, right? Whether regardless of what it is, like in your case it was leaving work behind to go walk into this world of business school, or in my case it was having to leave a whole life behind and start again, in Toronto again. But I think if we can lean into that possibility, right, and like and almost feel excited for the adventure of what may come from it, versus hanging on to our past story or the way things were, that's when we also shift perspective again, and like as you said, we start to actually feel a bit enthusiastic of like what can I create here, or who can I be in this new space, and what
Yeah.
could come my way, right? And I think that's like the beauty in it, is sometimes when it's status quo, you just kind of tend to go along and it's like you're operating in your day to day. But when things are disrupted, that's when, initially you may feel fear, but if you can shift that towards possibility, then you start to like go on this whole other adventure,
Mhm.
which is like, what we as humans really want. We want adventure.
We are so wired for it, right? Like once you
Yes.
land into that, like the momentum comes. Like the way you
Yes.
just described it, I think reminds me of the during the pandemic. We had a deal lined up
Hmm.
in the first quarter of 2020 to sell our
Yes.
company, and I flew from Indonesia back to Canada to run what we thought was going to be the sale of our
Hmm.
startup.
Hmm.
And I landed on, I think, March 13th, and the borders closed the next day. This was a
Wow.
U.S. and Canada company that was looking at buying us, and they were
Hmm.
big events. And they, in the next 3 weeks, realized they were going to have to lay off half of their employees, and that
Wow.
it just for them, they couldn't justify buying us at the same time as doing this. It just optically
Yes.
didn't make sense. And
Yes.
so we went from like, hey, we're about to sell our company, to the deal fell through. We were down a few employees because we'd had some poaching happen before and we hadn't replaced them because we were selling. And suddenly our
Hmm.
clients were heavily impacted. And I remember there was just this period where we weren't sure we were going to make it. And
Hmm.
then there was this sort of moment where we just went again all in. And I think you kind of mentioned like we got really resourceful.
Yep.
And then it kind of became a like, well, how good could we make this, right? And
Yeah.
and when I say get resourceful, I mean the first few months were hard, and we had
Yes.
to just simplify and lean in. So like
Hmm.
simplifying the pandemic became easier because there was nothing else to do.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
you know,
Forced simplification.
yeah, like I leaned in. I became a formal like employee. Like I was just like,
Mhm.
this is all I do, and was 100% committed. I jumped in to cover PM roles that we didn't have, and I had never kind of the deal had been I didn't have to be client facing when I was working in
Mhm.
this organization, and we had another startup, but we just funneled everything in to this
Mhm.
and leveraged every single government subsidy, that as it came out, leaned in,
Yeah.
did the research, did the grunt work, did the calculations,
Amazing.
and all of that kind of while spearheading, the strategic thinking and making executive level connections to try and build, more work and more opportunities, and pivoting our service offering, and updating our website and finding new work, and eventually
Yes.
actually building out the team, and basically building an entirely new team over
Hmm.
the course of the next 10 months.
Hmm.
And just, you know, even going back to like my pre-MBA medical space experience to really help build the connections and client relationships that were coming up for us and, I look at that now and I'm like, how did that, like,
Yeah.
at the moment, it was like, we had a little bit of a wobble. We weren't sure. And then it was like, all right, how do we make this work? And it
Yes.
became that adventure. It became that challenge that
Yes.
was, we were just on it and we just
Hmm.
did it. And it was it like, finessed. No. It was messy, but it was just like a one day after the other, one foot in front of the other. And again, we went from a deal that fell through, having lost some employees, having lost some clients, not sure we're going to make it. 10 months later, the company was 3 times the size and we sold.
Yes.
Um, and, we had a
Yes.
better outcome than we had been looking at 12 months before. And just like,
Yes.
get resourceful, know, like, choose your adventure, right? Like, choose what do you
Yes.
fight against,
Yes,
or
totally.
what
I
do you
have
want
a
to fight
question
for?
for you, Alex, about that though, if you don't mind. I have a question for you.
Go for
Um,
it.
yeah, so first of all, am I frozen? I feel like I'm frozen. I'm not?
No.
Okay, cool. I'm just freezing to myself. That's good. What I was going to say is that, like, what do you think was the drive behind the team getting resourceful? Because it's so true. Like, again, in a situation like that, it could go either way, right? You could sort of feel defeated. And then, of course, the action that you take comes from that place of feeling defeated. So even if you try something, there's a part of you like, oh, that's not really going to work, but okay, I'll do it. There's that sort of attitude
Yeah.
versus, as you said, going all in and saying like, we're committed to figuring this out. We're going to do whatever it takes. What is like, it's like one thing to say that you're doing that, but it's another thing to like wake up every morning, hear on the news all these things, dealing with the pandemic, right? Like dealing with this, like the social media telling you how bad things are, and to wake up every day and as a team say, we're going to do it differently. We're going to like commit to this. We're going to commit to our team. We're going to commit to this.
Yeah.
So what was that? How did you guys get there?
That's such a good question. I don't know if I have a, a particularly eloquent answer to
That's
it.
okay.
I think, our company tagline was thrive in disruption. So I think
Mm.
we
Oh
had
my
to live.
gosh, it was built into the DNA of the company.
Yeah, I think, we had come so far and had come quite close to, my business partner was the founder.
Mhm.
It had been, when I kind of went through our strategic options, had been in his decision about starting to look at potential exit or some other part of becoming a bigger part of an ecosystem.
Mhm.
And we'd gotten really close. So I think we kind of had that drive to like not let all of the hard work kind of slip away.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
and there's always a sunk cost fallacy. You don't want to get caught up in that. But I think in this
Mhm.
instance, like we knew we had something that worked. We knew we had something that was
Mhm.
valuable. And we also knew the odds, like startup space minus recessions and pandemics is hard. But we knew it was
Yes.
something really valuable. And I think honestly, like, don't get me wrong, like we had our challenges. You stick two people in high stress environments, and we were the few
Yeah.
people we were seeing other than our partners. Like, our team's working from home, but we were kind of in a
Mhm.
bubble together, just like grinding.
Mhm.
I think there is an element of like not being alone.
Mhm.
I am very much, a servant leader to my team, but I also
Mhm.
am very committed to other people's growth and success. For better, for worse, we could talk about what underlies that in another call.
Yeah.
But I remember just being so determined to do whatever I could
Mhm.
to,
Mhm.
initially keep the dream alive and then really like grow and recreate the dream and see what it could be. And I think that was where, we got that first, new opportunity and we started working on it. And I was like, this could be huge, and we knew also
Yeah.
that what we did was really relevant, right? We were doing digital reality. We knew that this could be huge in the context. That it was
Yes.
a matter of like
Yes.
helping other people see and understand. And we knew that what we were doing could
Mhm.
really make a difference. So I think
Mhm.
there was a lot of like, not being alone, kind of having a partner in the journey that, supports you, but also kind of drives you to do it because you're not just letting yourself down if you kind of punk out. Like
Yeah.
we had a team depending on us. I think there was belief in what we were
Yes.
doing and kind of having like a bit of a mission purpose driven component to it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's a good point. Like the team part, but I think the having a belief in what you're doing and believing in the greater why for what you're doing, I
Mm,
think that can like that is what can push you through those days where it feels like it's harder, or that, those voices, those loud voices are getting to you. I think coming back to your why and coming back to your mission and why you're doing what you're doing is so important.
Yeah. And I will say also, it's like, you know, I'm a big believer in not burning bridges. And so,
Hmm.
when I left the corporate world, things were on good terms. There was, but at the same time, for me, it was like I had made this leap. I had, gone into startup world. And I was just like not going back, So it
Yeah.
was either like,
Yeah.
and I actually already
Yeah.
knew that I wanted to get started on what I do now. But this, I wanted to like finish this off, and it was, in the pandemic was like, am I going to start something new? Maybe if I had some grand idea, but
Yeah.
trying to start a service for startups and small mediums was probably not the time. And so
Yeah.
what else was available was like go and look for a job in corporate. It was like
And that was not an option.
that was just like not an option
I
for me. I
know.
was like, no, like I've been
Yeah.
there, and that's always great that it's
Yeah,
available.
totally.
Now my
Sometimes it is
connection.
about burning the boats. Like there's no looking back, right?
Yeah,
Like so I think there comes a point where you're like, there's no looking back. There's there and that forces you to draw on that resourcefulness because you're like, I'm not going back. So let me really get creative here. I think that's definitely a driver.
yeah. So
Hmm.
I'm curious for you. When you see an opportunity, like we've talked about seeing the opportunity, and we've talked about getting resourceful, but I'm wondering,
Hmm.
how do you make sure you capture it? It's the world is competitive all the time. And
Hmm.
right now everyone's talking about how bad things are, what they're worried about.
Hmm.
So from your experiences, and all the things that you've overcome, what do you think is important? How do you either stand out or capture the opportunities?
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the big things is to not get caught up in groupthink. Like,
Mm.
I was actually working with a woman who was in one of my group programs, and she is like this brilliant producer, right? And she like works full time and does side, has clients on the side as well. But her dream is to really go all in and just have her own freelance business where she does consulting. And she, works for companies like Netflix and Nike, like these Amazon big brands. And she kept saying to me, but it's not a good time. And, the market is terrible. And I said to her, how many clients do you need to, like create a business that would feel really great to you? And I think she said, like, if I had 3 clients, it would be great. And I was like, okay, there's the entire market, and then there's 3 clients. Like, do you think you could get 3 clients, right? So I think we can like really get caught up in, again, that like that big wave of thinking and forget like what it is that we actually need to create what we want. So that's like one thing, is to just like kind of tease out what it is that you need. Like even if you're looking for a job opportunity, um, all you need is that one right connection, right? That one door to open. It's not like you need a thousand job offers, right? So I think that's it's important not to get swept up again, because if we start thinking like how everybody else is thinking, then we'll act the way everyone else is acting, and then we end up in the pile of resumes that are just like not even being looked at, right? So I think that's where the like zig versus zag comes in for me, is like forget all that. Think about you, think about what you have to offer, think about the skills you have. Another thing that I've talked about a lot recently is, like I mentioned at the beginning of this call, all of these skills and experience and wisdom that you have that aren't on your LinkedIn profile. How can you leverage that to find an opportunity, right? Is it like your network? Is it your way of connecting dots and helping others? Like there's so many things that we can draw on um, to find what it is that we need, but only if we don't get caught up in sort of the way, like we're sort of being told to think about
Mm,
things.
that's such a good point. I'm actually, that makes
Hmm.
me curious also. talk about the things that aren't on your LinkedIn profile. And there's definitely a
Hmm.
move towards, authenticity and
Hmm.
vulnerability. And I mean, the things I've done in the last few years, things I never would have imagined. I used to compartmentalize like crazy. Um,
Yes.
but I think more people get to know you, the more opportunities come your way.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and people can only really resonate with you so much. I talk about this a lot with my clients around their leadership of like,
Hmm.
how approachable you are if you're not if you're perfect, it's not
Yes. Yes. They need to
approachable.
see
And
you're human.
yeah,
Hmm.
there's all kinds of reasons for that, right? Like
Hmm.
shyness gets mistaken for, not being approachable, and all kinds of things. But I'm wondering whether, is there something to what you're saying around, what's not on your profile, maybe what should be, or how you should be looking to connect with people and let them see those things, right? Like how do you get people to know you beyond your profile?
Yes. I mean, that is such a good question. And Um, I've been talking a lot about this lately. Like, so I'll give an example. I spent 10 years with my husband in and out of the hospital. So navigating the healthcare system for 10 years, you learn so much, right? Like you learn leadership skills because you really need to, you need to manage your own, the care of your loved one in the end, right? You have to take the lead, and you also have to manage this very sort of fragmented system with different doctors who don't talk to each other, and like the ins and outs, and all the reporting and the tests and all of that. So I think there's like leadership skills that come from that. And there's also just like, I call it solution finding, like just being in this constant mode of like, instead of even looking at it as a problem, it's just like, where's the solution? How do I find a solution to this? Um, and I think that this kind of leads to the conversation we've been seeing a lot out there around having a personal brand. And I think when people hear
Mhm.
that term, personal brand, like some people bristle because they're like, well, I don't want a logo, and what are my colors? And and I don't think
Right.
personal brand is about that. Yeah, I think it is about like who you are as a person, right? Because when it does come down to um, especially when times are tough, and you know like it's not just about hiring numbers, like, oh, we need 1,000 employees or whatever. It's like you're hiring a person for that role. If somebody can get to know who you are as a person, um, it it like opens that door. It opens that door and makes that connection that makes it much easier for somebody to hire you or to see you in that way. um, and so I think that there is something to, in your own way, developing your personal brand and
Mhm.
being able to market it in a way that feels right to you. Because again, it's not about everyone becoming an influencer and, like I said, having a fancy logo, but it's like, it's like, having a point of view. It's about being generous with your point of view. I think it's like, it's letting people get to know you.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's what do you stand for? What's your
That's
perspective?
right.
Right.
Yep.
I don't remember who said it, but it was sort of like, you don't want to be vanilla ice cream. Like, nobody hates
Mm.
vanilla ice cream. Nobody loves it.
Yeah, but
Nobody's
nobody loves it either.
when they go to the
That's
ice
right.
cream shop, right? Like,
That's
you want
right.
to be whatever, unique flavor, and the
That's right.
percentage of people that love you will absolutely love you and will, hire you or buy from you or whatever it is, and
Hmm.
back you because they actually like resonate and relate. And then everyone else
Yes.
who doesn't is fine. Like, you don't need those people.
Yeah.
If you have 10% of the
Hmm.
world, like, that's to your point about about clients, right? Like, that's more
Yes.
than enough for all of us.
Yes. Yes.
But
Exactly.
you want people to recognize you and remember you and resonate with you. You have
Yes.
to be memorable. You have to have
That's
something
right.
that they can resonate and remember and relate to. So yeah.
Yeah. And the beauty is we all have it. It's not like something we have to create. It's already there, right? It's just being able to, as you said, you know, stand for something.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Amazing. Well, I guess last question I want to have is just, you've had all of these experiences and,
Mhm.
overlapping, and you've had this incredible journey of your career.
Mhm.
How have these experiences led you to what you're doing now? Because you've gone from,
Mhm.
merchandising and product roles in,
Mhm.
basically, houseware and CPG
Yep.
and all sorts of things.
Apparel. Yep. Mhm.
And you've also had these like really creative endeavors
Mhm.
on your kind of startup side. So what are
Yes.
you doing now, and kind of how did you get there?
Okay, well, I actually love telling the story. So I started All You Are. It was one of those sort of quintessential entrepreneurial stories. I just like saw a problem and I wanted to solve it. I was like had a baby. I was sitting on the couch in a robe, and I was like, it was just like not the right robe. And I love robes, and I was like, why can't I find the perfect robe? And then, in that moment, that thought turned to, well, I don't know how to do that. I should create the perfect robe. And then 6 months later, 500 robes were being delivered to my mom's garage. It's like literally that's how it happened. Um, but what was funny is I called the brand All You Are, and it came to me very easily. It wasn't like a long, drawn out exercise to naming my brand. And it was always a side hustle. So I did that on the side. A year later, I joined Houseplant, Seth Rogen's cannabis company, as a VP of merchandising and brand. And I was there for 3 years and kind of running this side hustle on the side. But it was actually soon after we had launched, which was in March of 2021. It was a huge success. Everything sold out within 24 hours. Seth was on all the late night shows showing the products that I had like led the development on. And I afterwards, everyone was congratulating each other. And afterwards, I felt this sense of hollowness, which surprised me. It wasn't like the fulfilling feeling that I expected. And I realized that it was because I was helping Seth Rogen build his vision and his dream, but I had sort of shelved my own. And so I, at that point, decided that I was going to evolve what All You Are, my brand was, and I was going to go, as you say, all in on it. So less than a year later, I left my role at Houseplant, and now All You Are is a platform for empowering women to, follow their dreams and to live a life that is truly authentic to them. And I'm very much, it's for all women, but I am more so focused on women um, who are sort of, kind of approaching mid-age in the sense that they've had like a career and they've checked a lot of boxes and they're feeling like, wait, but is this all there is? Like I want to experience more. So now All You Are, in addition to having a product line of robes and loungewear, I host programs and workshops, and I also do corporate workshops for employee engagement. Yeah, so that's where All You Are is today.
That is such an amazing journey from the perfect robe to kind of female empowerment, self actualization.
Yes,
Amazing.
yes, exactly.
That feels like a really poignant point to end on. And again, it sounds like you kind of saw what was coming. So really having that vision of sort of what's coming and leveraging your own experience into that. I think, your clients are getting an amazing, amazing wealth of just fortitude from you around,
Thank you.
how to how to dream big and just
Mhm.
go after it, and not let the world get in the way.
Yes, I love the way you said that, not let the world get in the way. And, that's kind of the primary message of what we talk about is that there are a lot of loud voices in the world, right? And they're constantly screaming in our ear, but our inner voice is a whisper and our inner voice knows, right? And often what we do is I say we put her on mute or we hang up on her or whatever it is, or him, we hang up on her or him. But after a while, our inner voice starts screaming at us, right? And sometimes it takes it screaming at us for us to listen. But I think like it's just remembering that we all have that inner voice that knows how to guide us forward.
Yeah. I think that's so powerful. Well, thank you so much, Kena, again, for the time and the insights and for sharing your story. Where can people find out more about All You Are and you if they want to get in contact?
Yes, absolutely. So, well, of course, I'm on LinkedIn, Kena Paranjape, and then my site is All You Are, like just exactly as it sounds, full of words, .ca. So on there, you'll find my product collection, and then, of course, more information on my corporate workshops, one-on-one coaching, and group programs as well.
Amazing. I'll make sure to link that in the notes so people can easily click on it and
Thank you, Alex.
thank you, Kena. This is such a great conversation. All right. And thank you,
I
everyone who
loved
joined
it.
us live.
Yes, thank you.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Okay, bye, Alex.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in. Our goal is to create connections and inspire conversations. So please subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast with your network if you enjoyed today's episode. Sharing is caring. If you're ready to take your business to the next level and are curious how I can help, click the link in the episode notes to schedule a call. Got questions or topics you want us to discuss? Click the link in the episode notes to share them with us. Your question might even get featured in an upcoming episode. And remember, this podcast is not intended to replace legal, tax, or other kinds of professional advice. Thanks for joining us on this adventure. We'll catch you on the flip side.